Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Fabio and today we're going to look at Ellie's relationship with the cordyceps and look to see why she might be immune. Now, in order to come to any conclusion, we first need some medical information about Ellie. Lucky enough, in part 1, the crazy physician Jerry Anderson, aka Abby's dad, does run some tests when she gets to the hospital and he comes to some interesting findings. He shares his findings in a surgeon recorder, which you can find I don't know, somewhere in the hospital where Joel is trying to kill everybody. The guy mentions a couple important stuff. It's filled with medical jargon, but I'd like to, as a first step, I like to explain it very simply. And what he does is he first takes some blood tests, and also he takes a sample from the fluid that's going around Ellie's brain and spine, and he runs some tests. Now, kind of like a fun fact, taking a sample of the fluid that's going around the brain and the spine, it's done with a technique called the lumbar puncture. You basically put a needle there and you kind of just put the needle there and take a small sample out. Now, an important thing is, if you want to do it, you usually do like a CT scan if you're kind of like worried about if someone's like something is going on with someone, just to make sure there's nothing in the brain. If you just put a needle there and there is something there, it could lead to like fatal brain damage. So thank God Ellie didn't get hurt, and somebody should revoke this physician's license in my opinion. But anyways, once he got the samples, he does a couple tests. One, he mentions about seeing antigenic titers. Basically, he's able to see proteins of the cordyceps floating around in the fluid that he got. Then he cultured those samples. And in culturing, basically, you're trying to see if you can grow any bacteria or any organism from the blood sample that you got. That's what he does. He cultures it and he sees, wow, there you go. There's cordyceps actually there. So this is big, you know. You got a healthy person who has the test result of an infectious person. He also does an MRI scan with Ellie, and in that, he sees there's actually small cordyceps in Ellie's brain. So, oh my god, what the hell is going on? Now, interestingly, she also has some tests which is just like a normal person. One of them being is that her levels of white blood cells are completely normal. If you get sick, your immune system is going to kick. You're going to have elevated levels of white blood cells and antibodies. And if they're normal, it's like something is not right. Either like you got a messed up immune system or you're not sick. So it's very interesting. And by the way, also, Ellie's not even contagious too. So you got this person who's like a mix of both having the infection but also not developing any disease. And let's now get to the topic of seeing if Ellie's immune or not. I've watched a bunch of theory videos out there, and they all argue the fact that Ellie is so-called not immune and she is infected. But I don't personally agree with that. I think this is a big clickbait just to get the views. I definitely disagree. I think that Ellie is immune, and I like to explain it with using the definition of what immunity means. Immunity is defined as one's body not developing a disease if they get exposed to some organism. Your typical immunity happens when you have white blood cells there and available to fight back whatever disease that comes. You usually get this by getting sick once so you don't get sick again, or the whole purpose of getting vaccines is that to kind of like wake up your immune system so when the real thing comes, it's ready to fight it back. Now, there could be a different kind of way to also be immune. This is not very common, but this is basically through having some sort of like genetic mutation and things like that. It inhibits the organism, wherever that's like attacking your body, to not be able to like work properly. This is actually happens in AIDS. The virus HIV is terrible. Thank God, 40 years has passed since its discovery and we've got a lot of cures, but it's still a horrifying disease. There are some people who are HIV positive, meaning they have HIV, but they don't actually get the sickness. What the hell is going on? So HIV needs a specific protein on the immune cells to kind of break in and get inside and hijack the cell. With these people, they have a mutation in that specific protein, so the HIV can't really properly get inside. So what happens is like these guys are not working the way they can. And the immune system is now able to kind of control it. It doesn't fully kill it off, but it keeps it at a very good control level. And thankfully, these people don't develop AIDS. So these guys will get the infectious virus, but they don't develop disease. So technically, they're immune. That's why I think with Ellie's case, because she has it, but she's not turning into a sick person, I think that Ellie's immune. Now, the question is, how the hell is she immune? What the hell is going on? How is it possible that there's a freaking cordyceps there, but she's not turning into a zombie? There's a couple of theories that I have, but first I wanted to focus on my number one theory about it. And before getting into that, I need to explain our flora. Basically, inside our body and on our body, everywhere, skin, mouth, your intestine, it's filled with organisms. You got bacteria everywhere. You even got some fungi growing everywhere. Not everywhere, I mean some parts. But you get the point. These guys are essential. Without them, we are in a big trouble. Our intestine is filled with a hell load of bacteria, which we just simply call it gut flora, which helps us to digest. We even get vitamins from these guys. So hell yeah, kudos to the gut flora team. That's why even there's a whole argument about how probiotics are also good, because with probiotics, you're providing bacteria to your intestine. Now, anyways, one benefit of your gut flora is that they prevent unwanted organisms from growing there. And if they're not around, you're going to see some nasty stuff come out of there that are going to give you some nasty diarrhea. To give you an example, there is something called a C.diff. C.diff is this very annoying thing that floats around. It can get inside when you're like, you didn't wash your hand, you ate something and it's dirty. These guys got some like badass spores. Those spores are very annoying. They get there and they'll sit there. Now, typically if there's nothing there and there's a food supply, bacteria is going to grow. These guys can't do anything. Why? Because the gut flora takes all the food and prevents these guys from getting ahead. So you have C. diff there, but you're not getting sick because the gut flora are doing a great job. Now, time comes and maybe you get sick and you have to take an antibiotic. When you take an antibiotic, antibiotics are not like, oh, like I'm going to target the unwanted thing. No, antibiotics are antibacteria. They will affect any bacteria, good or bad. So people who take antibiotics do have a chance that their gut flora levels are going to go down. And when their levels go down, this provides a great opportunity for the C. diff to grow. So then the C. diff grows and then starts producing some nasty stuff that turns into diarrhea. And God, man, the C. diff is really nasty. That's why there's a whole topic like in the medical community where it's so important that not to give like wrong antibiotic to somebody, or trying your best to keep the duration as short as possible, because problems like this can arise. You can have C. diff, and when you get C. diff, that stuff is nasty. You need like strong antibiotics to get it, and you even have a chance, even when it gets cured, it comes back. Anyways, enough of the C. diff. Now, why I explain this, I think this is exactly the same analogy that's going on with the cordyceps in Ellie. Ellie's gotten a mutated strain of cordyceps. What's there is not the infectious one. This thing has gotten into the brain and has become part of Ellie's flora. It's this there, it's chill, this version is not aggressive, doesn't want to change Ellie's behavior, it's just sitting there happy. And now that it's become technically part of Ellie's flora, the immune system is also not attacking it. How this has happened, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but maybe again through the aim of luck, which is something that, in biology, you need a lot of luck for good things to happen. The surface proteins on the cordyceps is similar to Ellie's own cells, so the immune system is just considering, hey, these guys like are friendly, so not a big problem. So those guys are sitting there, and now, Ellie's walking around and she's breathing a hell ton of spores. There's gonna be those infectious spores finding their way to Ellie's brain. But what happens is these guys don't let those guys to grow. Similar to how our gut flora doesn't let C. diff to grow. How does it do it? I don't know. Maybe some chemicals, or maybe it just limits the food supply for those guys to grow. Whatever it does, it's preventing from the actual infectious cordyceps to grow. So with the help of that, Ellie is stayed immune. Now, I want to just mention two honorable mentions. Not going to really explain much about them, but these could also be a possibility. One is that Ellie's infected with like the regular cordyceps, but then her immune system is able to produce some specific antibodies that is just keeping it under control and preventing it from like affecting and growing too much. And the problem is, this is Jerry Anderson, the physician's fault now, because he doesn't have specific testing to measure this kind of antibody. He just has some general antibody testing that seems to be normal. So this could be it. It's a possibility. I don't really buy it, but it could be. Another possibility is kind of like the similar thing with the HIV case that we talked about. Ellie's got some genetic mutation, and because of that genetic mutation, it just makes the fungi kind of unable to affect her and do much. And then probably since the fungi sees there's nothing like changing or nothing's happening, it just has gone into a dormant state. It's not doing anything there. So that's kind of what I think could be it. But again, I think this cordyceps becoming part of Ellie's flora is the most likely thing that's happening. Well, there you have it, folks. That is my take on Ellie's immunity. Thank you so much for listening. Also, a huge shout out to Mr. Jerry Anderson, the head surgeon at St. Mary's Hospital, for running this test and sharing his recordings with us. Although I do have to say, I have a bunch of problem with both his parenting and also his medical practices. Maybe that'll be something I'll talk about in another video. With that said, I talk to you guys later. Bye bye.